Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the City of Maple Ridge Committee of the Whole for January 23rd, 2024. The meeting and the City of Maple Ridge carries out its business on the traditional and unceded territories of the Katzie First Nation and the Kwantlen First Nation. Madam Clerk, would you be so kind as to provide us with the framework for Committee of the Whole?
Good morning. This meeting is being live streamed and recorded and will be available to the public for playback on our website in accordance with Council Policy 3.2. I will just take a moment and let anybody know that is viewing online. We are having technical difficulties with our camera, so there will be no view of the council chambers today, but you should be able to see the shared screen that will follow the PowerPoint presentations. Committee of the Whole is the initial venue for council review of information to ensure that council can debate and vote on issues at a future council meeting. No voting takes place on bylaws or resolutions during Committee of the Whole. This meeting is being conducted through the city's One Meeting platform. For voting purposes, council has been provided with voting cards, green for in favor, red for opposed, and yellow for point of order. For members of the public who would like to speak during community forum, please clearly state your name and city of residence before beginning your comments. If you are participating electronically, please use the raise hand icon, and when you are called upon, turn on your camera. If you are attending the meeting in person, please come forward to the podium when the chair invites speakers. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. And our first item is to approve the agenda. May I get a motion to do so, please? Moved by Councillor Carrera, seconded by Councillor Schiller. Any discussion, omissions, additions? Seeing none, all in favor? Motion carries. Adoption of the minutes for January 16th, 2024. May I get a motion to approve them, please? Moved by Councillor Dewick, seconded by Councillor Carreras. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Motion carries. Thank you. To delegations. Madam Chair, sorry. Madam Clerk.
Thank you. We have one delegation today, and it is from the Restorative Justice Program update. Please come forward.
Good morning, Mayor, Council, and staff. We are here today to present on the Restorative Justice Program, a program of Maple Ridge Pitt Meadows Community Services. I'm Ranjit Kingra. I am the program coordinator and facilitator of Restorative Justice. And
good morning, and I'm Kim Mapson. I'm the manager of programs and services at Community Services.
And with us today, we also have Christy Rogie, Director of Operations at Community Services. Okay, so what is restorative justice? I can put it quite simply. It is providing a space for the people that have caused the harm to take responsibility and be accountable for what they've done. It's also providing a space for victims to be heard, their impact of the harm that was done and how they would like to see it being repaired. It's also a space for community safety. How it works. We get our referrals. We make phone calls out to both parties, or it could be several parties, and we invite them to come to the office for a meeting or several meetings. We talk about the things that have been going on for them. We talk about the offense. We talk about the harm that's been done. What does accountability look like? What might be needed to repair the harm? What else is going on for people so that we can provide or help them navigate support services. And then when we feel that they're ready, we will bring them together and have the same conversations. Okay, so 2023, we saw a 93% increase in restorative justice over 2022. We were busy. And when we look at referrals, it's not just the 59 referrals, it's about the other people that we also supported. So it could be families, it could be spouses, victims, all of that. And of course, 90% resided in Maple Ridge. What I'd like to say about this, when it's not just working with the file or the person, what we're seeing is we're working with trauma. We're working with substance use. We're seeing some of the underlying stuff that's going on for people. And we're trying to help them get through that, deal with that, support them, and navigate other services for them. Impact and successes. Those are some of the quotes we took from our evaluations. The first two are from people that caused the harm. The last three are from people that were victims. So it's pretty impressive when you say it was when they say it's a very satisfying experience and it's good closure. And that's exactly what restorative justice is all about. It's about helping people get to where they need to go. We're engaging them. We're supporting them, restoring relationships. We're doing all of that. I like to brag a bit. Go ahead.
So as we look towards what restorative justice looks like in the future, we're continuing to strengthen our relationship with our BC prosecution services. So we did see an increase in our Crown referrals this year, which was really exciting for us. We've done a whole bunch of grants. So if people don't know, restorative justice is something that does not have ongoing sustainable funding. We are very, very grateful to the City of Maple Ridge for providing funding to us every year, which does help with the programming. But this is a really big program that needs to expand and grow for our community. And so we're constantly seeking out different grants, federally and provincially, that can support the growth and sustainability of this program. So one of the grants that we did write is our Choices program, and we're really excited with the first team within the community and just working really collaboratively with them and really enhancing services as a whole to our entire community. And what this means with First is really collaborating over this Choices program, which is a 10-week program for young people to learn some life skills, learn conflict resolution. We're going to be working with Sam French from the First team and bringing her in, doing some counseling pieces. So we're really excited about what this collaboration and experience together will look like for restorative justice and just for Maple Ridge as a whole. And then I think the other piece that we're really working on this year is just reaching out to our communities. We had a lot of reach outs over 2023 in regards to vandalism and theft in the stores and bringing some of those persons in and doing circles with our businesses. So really trying just to expand on some of that work. We think there's some really important pieces that can happen. And the value that it brings to the youth and the reduction in recidivism is really important to us as well. So I think those are our main updates for the year.
Wonderful. Thank you for that. Speakers list, questions or comments, or is there more to your presentation?
Did you have something?
I just wanted to say that we're celebrating 30 years this year.
Thank you.
Congratulations. Amber. Questions, comments? Mayor Rumi.
Well, thank you very much for the presentation. I think the term "it takes a village" applies in this situation. It's all the little things that all our community can do together to make things a little bit better. I'm looking down the list of type of offenses. There's quite a bit of there. Is there? I'm trying to envision who these folks might be. Are we talking about teenagers that are runaways or schools? Like, is there a common thread, like where these folks are coming from, or anything we can understand about that?
Not really a common thread. We've seen adults who are shoplifting because they're trying to support their families. They have limited budgets. We have seen youth shoplifting. So there is no common thread really when it comes to age or gender. What it is needs, unmet needs.
I think if we look at it from the perspective of some of the things that we're seeing are like below the iceberg issues in Maple Ridge. So we're seeing, what we're seeing on the surface is one thing, but what's happening below, restorative justice is really trying to address. So a lot of pieces regarding trauma, youth that are disengaged and disconnected from community, that are engaging in ways that might not be so pro-social, that might be crime-ridden. We see groups of youth getting together and going through Walmart and vandalism, and there's a lot more going on below what we're seeing. And often that happens to be community disconnection, family disconnection, trauma, and we do see a lot of food insecurity. So I know with the adults that we've seen this year shoplifting, that's really where that's come from. So trying to set up to resources that can get them the food that they need versus having to engage in criminal activity.
And I think that's important to try to understand where that's coming from. Do some of these folks, do they even have a support network? Right? So if we understand where all that's coming from, that helps us to better target other programs in the future and so on and so forth. Because when they come to you, they've already experienced this, right? So is there learnings that we can have that help us understand where we should be maybe focusing on part of the prevention part of it? I don't know. In our community, yes, we have some homeless folks. But sometimes I think they get blamed for a lot of things that they're not actually even doing. So like, maybe this is a tough question, but of the folks that are homeless, are we seeing them in these numbers? Like, are you noticing something like that?
So I will say that referrals that we're receiving are not from our unhomed community. We're seeing referrals from people that have jobs. We're seeing from youth. So I would say that because I engage with other programs at community services, such as our family strengthening program, we're seeing youth that are really struggling. So what we've had as a problem this year, and we know we need to enhance the services, hence funding, is having that one-to-one support for carrying out of these restorative justice agreements. Because when we go to family and we're like, hey, we need you to support this 14-year-old to carry out some of those community services that they've come out with, they're like, yeah, I'm not doing this. Like, this is their problem. I don't have time for this. They're overwhelmed. They're overstretched. And so, it's a community problem. It's a family problem. I know that we're addressing it through some of our other programs, which is why so much of restorative justice isn't just spent on what traditionally it would be, which is these actions and these agreements, but it's focused on how do we get referrals? How do we get them engaged for both the victim and the person that's caused harm?
Okay, and final question, if I have time. Okay, thank you. Through the chair to our guests here today. So I know that you're working with different organizations. Are you also connected into our bylaws and our CSOs as well? So they're a part of that process.
Yeah, so I sit on our FAST committee, so I have those connections with Chad and his team and work really closely with Melissa as well. So I feel that relationship's being established and will continue to grow, especially with the creation of the first team. I think we've got some really unique capacities within community services and within the city to really build this really interesting relationship and partnership. So yeah, well, that'll probably be part of 2024 updates.
Perfect. Listen, thank you for all that you do. It's clearly something that's needed in our community and wanted. So keep up the great work, and we'll keep talking about it. Thank you.
Thank you,
That's
Mayor
all I have.
Rooney, and the chair recognizes Councillor Dewitt.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you. I echo the comments of the mayor. I think back to Lola Chapman when she originally formed this group, and I know, Ranjit, you've been around for a long time, so you've always been very dedicated and really wanted to ensure that this program continues. And I really like what I'm hearing. I think it is important because, especially in the youth piece, people make a mistake and they want to right that mistake without having a criminal record and all of that. So it really is important. And the more we can do to continue to work with the school district and reach out to the various organizations, it's overall better for the community as a whole. So thank you. And I can see Lola is probably smiling down on us and very proud that this continues to be an organization after 30 years.
Thank you, Councillor Dewitt. Seeing no other speakers, I'd like to extend my personal gratitude for having community services in our community, the one-stop shop, as was mentioned, where it's not only restorative justice, you do connect with other programs through your wonderful, now new building and staff that you have. So thank you for all the work that you do. Not to add to your plate or anything, but just a quick question, how much coordination are you doing with the Greg Moore Youth Center, for example, or the Friends in Need Food Bank? As a result of your comment about the needs that are being unmet?
So I think in terms of as the food bank, as we've had clients come in that have identified food insecurity, we've been able to connect with them, see if there's ways to make it work within the realms of the mandate with the food bank. So we have those connections kind of on an at needed basis. For the Greg Moore Youth Center, I think some of that comes in with starting to come in with our connections with Melissa and Chad and working with that first team and some of the pieces, the city initiatives, like the Hoops Night, how that's going to fit into this. So some of that's earlier on where we're looking as we're identifying those needs.
Excellent. I'm very happy to hear that. And if I could be of any support either on the Friends in Need Food Bank or through my capacity as a counselor, I would love to continue to be of support to community services. One last question. When we're looking at the demographics that you serve, and it states here that the ages are between 12 and 24, who would be the decision maker, if you will, if we were to expand that age group to older adults as well, as we're seeing more and more adults of an older age that are unfortunately committing some of these offenses?
So restorative justice as a whole goes from 9 until as old as you want to go or as young as you want to go past that 9. So we'll take people that are 60 or 70 years old in terms of restorative justice. That 12 to 24 is in relation to the choices group.
Right.
So that's a youth-based program. And I think if we saw a community need for adults needing life skills and needing to learn how to do conflict management in the same way that we're working with youth by engaging counselors and recreation and other pieces, I think we would then take a look at it. We haven't seen that as a trend in terms of needing for the community at this point from what we're seeing in restorative justice, which is why that 12 to 24 youth basis for choices was established. But like anything we do at community services, if there's a need, we try and figure out how to solve it. So I think we would do that.
Excellent. And again, I really want to thank not only those that are here in chambers today, but all of the staff at Community Services for the wonderful work that you do. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Madam Clerk, we'll be moving into Planning and Development Services, item 5.1.
Thank you. The first item under Planning and Development Services is application 2023-350-RZ for properties located at 24070 128 Avenue and 24195 Fern Crescent to rezone from RS3 to CD 5-23 to facilitate the development of 48 townhouse dwelling units, and staff are in attendance to present.
Good morning, Mr. Chair and Committee. The application above you on the screen for consideration of first and second reading for OCP amending bylaw 7980-2023 and zone amending bylaw 7979-2023 is being considered at this meeting for consideration to have the medium density designation and portion of the other parcel that's designated to the west at 24070 128th Avenue Neighborhood Park to be proposed to be designated to medium high density residential. Existing zoning is RS3 single detached rural residential, and the proposed zoning is a comprehensive development zone 523, which is based on our RM1 zone, which occurs in quite a few areas throughout the city. The existing site area is 0.837 hectares, and the area in Imperial is about 2 acres. And the proposal as revised is to promote the development of 47 townhouse dwelling units. This is subject property on the cadastral map, just with 120th Avenue to the north and Fern Crescent to the east. It's the application with the current designation with the medium density residential designation and the little sliver of park that was noted previously. That just is along the westernmost portion of this parcel. This is the orthophoto showing the built environment as of last year. And this proposal was originally brought forward in 2021 as an application to rezone the subject properties from R3 to R3 for intensive detached single urban residential lots and an R1 detached low density urban residential to permit the proposed subdivision of 27 lots at that time. February 8, 2022, council gave first reading to the zone amending bylaw to permit the subdivision of 27 single family lots. Since then, the applicant has revised their application and it was brought forward in December of 2023 for consideration of first and second readings. And this revised application was to propose to rezone the subject properties from RS3 to the CD 523 zone based on the RM zone as mentioned above. And that was to permit the construction of 48 townhouse units with proposed FSR of 0.832. So council referred this application back at the regular council meeting on the 12th to staff and the applicant to review the density portion of the application as well as proposed garage sizes. So the applicant, after discussions with staff and looking at the proposal, have revised their application now to include 47 units with an FSR of 0.75. 0.75 FSR is the standard floor space ratio or density in the RM1 on which the CD zone is based. So this is consistent with the typical RM1 density. The application has been reduced just from 48 units to 47 units. And you might ask why that is. It's because the application has the unit's floor area has been reduced in size and the garages have been enlarged and all of the 4-bedroom units, 38 4-bedroom units have been removed. They're all 3-bedroom units. So thus there's a large decrease, about 10% decrease in the FSR, floor space ratio, but only 1 unit reduction in the number of units. So these subject properties are located in the Horace Hamlet area, the Silver Valley area plan. And that indicates the densities in this area range from 15 to 40 units per hectare from medium to medium low density development adjacent to schools and civic uses. Now, given the OCP designation amendment is still required to change a small portion of the neighborhood parkland to at that address to medium high density residential and the rest of the lot to medium high density residential, the density will have to be increased from the upper limit of 40 units per hectare to 57 units per hectare for the subject site. Now, the interesting thing to note is that that designation in the plan allows for the current one a range of single family lots up to the RM1 townhouse units. That's why you have a range of 15 to 40 units per hectare in the current plan. It allows for small single family lots to townhouse density. This density, of course, is townhouse density and is at 57 units per hectare. So just looking a little bit further than that, I'm just going to add a little bit more, thinking about the density at FSR 0.75 and 57 units per hectare. I asked staff to look at 4 random sites in Albion, and the density at 0.75 FSR was typically 54 to 58 units per hectare. So it's about the same density per hectare. So it shows that because our Silver Valley plan has a range of single family to townhouse densities, it's a little bit low on the high side for the RM1 townhouse density. So I was just wondering why the density was so different. And for this type of RM1 density, it's quite typical, 57 units per hectare. Just looking at some other sites. That was just something I did yesterday. So it's not in the presentation, unfortunately. The applicant is providing also, just continue on, to provide voluntary cash contribution in the amount of $347,800, which is $7,400 times 47 units, in keeping with the council policy with regard to community money contributions for the 47 townhouse dwelling units. It's noted the application is revising the density down from 0.832 to 0.75 FSR. The applicant is proposing to utilize the density bonus for the mechanism in the RM1 zone in this comprehensive development zone to achieve a 0.75 FSR with a contribution to the density bonus of $419,932. The applicant is also proposing the voluntary contribution of $195,000 toward the improvement of the adjacent neighborhood park despite now the outdoor amenity space requirements on the site meeting the requirements in the zoning bylaw. And to that effect, the revised application now has an outdoor amenity area of 470 square meters, which exceeds the RM1 open space requirements of 235 square meters. So the parking on the site meets in the bylaw for the residential units of having 2 spaces for every unit and side-by-side garages with no tandem garages. And the visitor parking has an additional 2 spaces. Instead of the 10 required, it has 12 spaces required, including 2 accessible spaces. And the say that the 3-bedroom units now are all 3-bedroom units. All the 4-bedroom units have been removed. And that has also changed the FSR, but also allowed for some garage sizes that in some, for at least one of the cars in each of the garages, it's very much larger than would be required, or more lengthy than required. I'll go into that in the next slide. So as noted, there's 47 3-bedroom townhouses, all 3-story in height, and versus the 38 4-bedroom and 10 3-bedroom townhouses in the previous proposal. So just going into the garages, which were looked at quite a bit. On the left column are the length requirements of 6.7 meters. And then just a summary of the revised application before you right now. In the next column, which has the density, the lengths of 6.1 on one side, and you'll see 9.3 on the other because the bedroom downstairs are being removed. So it's a very long garage on one side. In the second instance of 8 units have 8.4 meter depth of garages. And the next set of 6 units, they're up to 8.4 meters on one side and 5.77 meters on the other side. So, and then the previous application that came to council in December is on the right of the screen with the smaller garages that existed at that time. Now on the width of the garages, the widths are all 6.5 meters is the normal width, and all the widths are at or just below the width that's required for 6.5 meters, except for one of the, or 2 of them, one type of garage. The 2 at the bottom, there's one side that's a little bit narrower, or about 0.8 meters narrower, but most of them are just about or a little bit exceeding the 6.5 meters in the new revised proposal. And just in that, here's the enlarged garages in 31 units showing the 2 cars or pickup truck and a car, and then the enlarged bicycle and other storage area that's allowed in the garage by removing the ground floor bedroom when these units were reduced from 4 to 3 bedrooms. And this is another unit type, and 6 more of the units showing a similar large garbage and recycling area. So the current proposal of dwelling units are limited as required in the zoning to 6 units in 1 block, and the vehicle access to the development is Fern Crescent. So just looking at that, the principal uses, another thing that was changed with the change of the bylaws, the principal uses of the ground floor are all for non-habitable use or just for storage, bike parking and car parking. There's no bedroom on that. So that's another restriction in the zoning to ensure that there wouldn't be a bedroom on that floor. It's just used for parking and storage. Also, there'd be some siting reductions in the CD zone from the typical siting in the RM1 zone from 6 meters on Fern Crescent to 3 meters, and on the west side from 7.5 to 4 meters, and on the south side from 7.5 to 5.7 meters, and on the east side from, which is Fern Crescent, I think, sorry, 128th Avenue. I think the numbers of, sorry, from 128th Avenue are reduced from 7.5 to 4.5 meters. That's on this screen there. So the building height in the CD zone is 9.5 meters as a standard RM1 zone height. Then it's being increased to 9.6 meters in this CD zone. The common open area is provided in the zone is much higher, more open spaces required in the zone than the typical zone in the RM1 zoning bylaw provisions to ensure that there's a large amount of open space so that it can't be reduced later. And the outdoor amenity space is 450 square meters, And that is again higher than the normal provisions in the RM1, which would be 235 square meters. So not only is the proposal increasing the amount of common outdoor open space and amenity space, the actual bylaw guarantees it by having customized provisions for more space in it compared to the normal RM1 zone. Now, there still are a number of proposed variances, although we did include customized open space and outdoor amenity space and setback requirements in the zone. There will be variances to the parking and loading bylaw. And before that, just note, there's also a variance to the subdivision servicing bylaw of the road dedication being reduced from 3 meters to 1 meter along 128th Avenue, which is supported by the engineering department because the proposed reduction will still allow for the road design that is required by the city. But now going into the variances in the parking loading bylaw, and this is to accommodate the parking that was shown on the previous slides. There's a reduction of 31 units, the length to 6.7 to 6.1 meters, and another one from 6.7 to 5.7, and the widths from 6.5 to 6.4 for 14 and of the units, and 6.5 to 6.3 for 8 of the units. And to that one type of unit where there's 2 units, 6.5 to 5.7 that was shown on the previous slide. So staff was supportive of the relaxations because although most of them are fairly minor, there's one a little bit more moderately larger one, and overall the garages are much larger than in total area than is required in the bylaw, given the removal of the bedroom on 38 of the units and having those large bike and parking and garbage and recycling storage areas. So this is a layout here showing 128th Avenue on the north and then Fern Crescent on the east with the main access off of Fern Crescent. And this is a typical elevation showing the front entrance off of a pedestrian pathway, or sorry, pedestrian sidewalk in front of the units. And this is the rear interior facing the driveway with the garages and the same type of unit pattern. One of the elements that's changed from the ADP is the increased open space that was noted, and also just changing the units to have 2 color schemes as well. So there's a little more variation in units. This is another elevation here from building south, building 5 south elevation. And then this is just another example of a building elevation showing the front down below and the back facing the driveway above, and the side elevations on the right. So, and the recommendations are before you on the screen. The first one is regarding the official community plan consultation requirements, which I won't read in detail, which are standard, and that the next non-standard or specific to this application requirement is that the zoning amending bylaw 7791/2021 be repealed. That is the bylaw that had come forward before council for the single family housing. And that this new official community plan amending bylaw be given first and second reading, forwarded to a public hearing, and that the zone amending bylaw be given first and second reading, be forwarded to a public hearing, and that subject to final reading, the following conditions be met, which would include the voluntary contribution of $347,800, community amenity contributions, a density bonus contribution for the density over 0.6 FSR up to 0.75 FSR of $419,932, and voluntary park contribution or amenity contribution for the park adjacent to the west to the city for $195,000 be provided, and the registration of a servicing agreement a standard for as a covenant on the site, as well as the required securities for this road dedication along 128th Avenue, and registration of the standard restrictive covenants protecting visitor parking, not to be used for resident parking, and for stormwater management, and the standard requirement for review to ensure there's no underground fuel storage type tanks on the site, and if so, that the necessary studies be done. Mr. Chair and Committee.
Thank you, Mr. McMullen. May I have a motion to move this forward to our next council meeting, please? Moved by Counselor Tan, seconded by Counselor Dewick. Questions? Counselor Schiller.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you to staff for the presentation. I do have some questions, and I think I'll just start. I just want to learn a little bit more about the Silver Valley area plan. You just sort of tell me like when that plan came into effect, when that happened, and as well, I noticed in that plan that there's sort of specific hamlets, and I don't see that in a lot of area plans. I was just interested in sort of the philosophy behind having the hamlets in the plan.
Sure, Madam, Mr. Chair, through to Councillor Schiller. So the plan was developed in about 2000 to 2001, and the philosophy was that there'd be a number of small hamlets that would be village centers for higher density and in limited commercial, so that people, residents in the area would not have to commute longer distances, as had become the common pattern through the 20th century and still is to a certain extent. So there'd be local services with higher density near the hamlet and village centers. So, and then going out from those village centers into lower density residential areas and eco clusters, which would be the eco clusters, including medium density, single family and occasionally duplex dwellings which would also maintain a large area of natural features being free corridors and steep slopes. So the village centers and the hamlet centers being the higher density, radiating out to the lower density eco clusters and low density designations. And this is in one of the moderately higher density hamlet centers.
Right. Okay. Thank you for that. And I just want to make sure that I'm clear on this. So the current, the zoning for this property, which is medium to high residential, calls for 40 units per hectare at the high, that's the upper limit. Is that correct?
That is correct. So that the current designation is having 15 to 40 units per hectare. And as noted in the beginning of the presentation, that designation allows for a number of small lot zones up to the RM1 zone is the highest density, which is the townhouse type of zoning. So, and that's what we have here, something at that, about that density. But as noted, the density of the, just looking at this further, the 40 FSR or 40 units per hectare rather, is actually a little bit low compared to what we find in units per hectare in the rest of the city. In other areas where we have points, having looked at 4 applications just randomly, where we have 0.75 FSR in Albion, in both Northeast and other parts of Albion, the density was in the mid 50 to upper 50s units per hectare. And I don't know if we've really looked at that before, except that we have this comparison here where we use units per hectare in Silver Valley. And in the rest of the city, we use zones with floor space ratio. So that's something I just looked at yesterday, actually.
Okay, because that is kind of the final thing that I was just looking for some clarification on, because it sounds like the current floor space ratio meets the typical RM1 zone requirements, and yet we still end up with more units per hectare. And can you just talk a little bit more about how those two things reconcile?
I think, and that's why I looked into it further. The RM1 zone is used throughout the city and has a 0.6 FSR base going up to 0.75 FSR for the higher density with a density bonus. And in the Silver Valley plan that was done, said about 23 years ago, measured density in units per hectare, not in FSR. And so that designation that had 15 to 40 units or has 15 to 40 units per hectare allows for single family houses on smaller lots up to townhouses. So I think at that time, there was an envisioning of townhouses being a bit lower density 23 years ago when that plan was done. But now we see that when we use the RM1 throughout the city, we tend to have a higher density of about 50 to 59 units per hectare in the 4 that we looked at.
Okay, thank you. And my final question on this round, are there other applications in this area that have been granted this kind of adjustment to the OCP in the last couple of years, right? So we're looking at adjusting the OCP to allow this number of units, and have other applications had that adjustment made in the last couple of years?
No, this would be the first application to do
Okay.
that.
Thank you. Those are my questions for this round.
Thank you, Counselor Schiller. Any other questions? Counselor Carreras.
Thank you. Can you talk, thank you, Counselor Schiller. You had a lot of my questions and thought process in there. So thank you for doing that. Can you just talk a little bit about, because of course I was reading this plan kind of more thoroughly to the Silver Valley plan. The differences in the hamlets, like when I read through, it looked like the River Village was sort of going to be your more bustling hamlet, and that the Horse Hamlet was sort of right on the edges and more your larger homes, and the density wasn't as envisioned for the Horse Hamlet as it might have been for River Village. Can you just talk a little bit about the differences in the different hamlets
Yeah.
and the
Yes.
vision for them as a hamlet?
Yes. Mr. Chair, through to Councilor Carreras and committee, I would say yes, that the River Village is the bustling center, and that's where we have the proposed multifamily building with commercial at grade apartment building at 4 stories on Balsam. So that is the higher density center of all of Silver Valley. And that is where we also have some higher density townhouse projects as well. But mainly right now we have the 1 apartment application in there. That's the center. Now the hamlets, including the Horse Hamlet, are envisioned to be, you could call that the whole neighborhood center or village center. This is the village center. The others are more like neighborhood subsidiary centers. And you're correct that they are to have a lower density than River Village. And Horse Hamlet, of course, is also near the river and intended to have higher density than eco clusters and the low density, but it is to be more of a neighborhood center with smaller single family lots and up to a maximum of the townhouse type of development. And this development is at the maximum of the townhouse development and has a little bit higher units per hectare being requested.
A little more than a little bit
Yeah.
higher. And then you talked about, I know this area plan, because I've talked about this area plan a few times over the years, is 20 years old, and I've questioned that age. But I've also been told over the years that there was a check-in and review of this area plan and the decision that it still stood.
On that, I would just look to our manager of community planning. Is she here to talk about any reviews of the plan since 2000?
Good morning, Mayor and Council. So the Silver Valley Area Plan is an interesting one. I believe it was created prior to the consolidation of our current official community plan. So it has been lightly updated from time to time. It hasn't necessarily gone through a holistic review in recent memory. It is slated for a very close look with the upcoming housing legislation. So this is over the next couple of months is when we're going to be really looking at how the policies and the land uses have been working, and then what can be facilitated given that we're now working under a new housing legislation landscape.
Okay, thanks. And Councillor Schiller asked the question around other townhouses within the Silver Valley plan. And there is nothing that's this dense or this small of a unit. So I do appreciate that they reduced the FSR, but they also made 1,300 square foot units. So they're very, very small units for this area as well. But my question is does this, if we approve this, does this set like a precedent for going forward that we are essentially, by approving this, we're increasing the FSR and the units substantially in the entire Silver Valley plan? So this would not just be this single lot. This would have a significant impact on the entire area plan.
Mr. Chair, through to Councillor Carreras, the amendment is designed to be legally specific to this property, but you could say that if there's a decision and then there is a precedent, I guess, in council decisions to do that, but not a binding precedent to increase the density. Just to note one thing, though, that this is the highest density townhouse project, except for in actually River Village itself on Balsam. That's the height. We have a commercial
Yeah,
ground four-story
the-
apartment. Then we have another townhouse project that's about the same density. So we do have one, but it's in the village center.
Yeah, which I think was sort of envisioned for the River Village area. And then my other, just let me know if I'm getting close, just
You're
like,
getting close.
just yell at me because I'm not looking that way, sorry. The other piece we've talked about over the years is sort of the need for a second crossing in the emergency exit. So if we're really looking at densifying this area, how does that look like if there's an emergency to get folks out of there? And have we had any commitment from any levels of government to help fund a second exit as in case there's an emergency?
Oh, I would turn this over to the Director of Engineering, Acting Director, regarding that.
Actually, if I may, Mr. McMullen, I would prefer that Councilor Carrera's question be taken offline, as it's not quite pertinent to this particular application, but rather to the greater picture. So can we get that question answered for you outside of this single application, as you're looking at the whole axis of Silver Valley, correct?
Well, yeah, but I think that this particular, because it's such a change in direction, I think it has an impact on the overall. If we're looking at densifying, and again, I'm getting into debate here and not questions, which is unfortunate for committee of the whole.
Yeah.
But I think if this could change the landscape for the Silver Valley plan, and although it may not be legal precedent, it is an implied sort of precedent, but I just, these are the things that prevent me from feeling good about this application. And so,
So I believe Mr. McMullen has clarified that the amendments are to this particular application, not to the entirety of the Silver Valley area plan. And there will be a review that's coming down. So just if I may, please stop you there and have that question answered to Councilor Carreras offline. Do we have any other questions? Councilor Tan.
Thanks,
Sorry, Point
Chair.
of order.
Please.
Sorry, I'm not understanding why that question can't be answered. I think it's a relevant question. So I'm not quite understanding your ruling as to why that question can't be answered if we have somebody here to answer that question.
As explained, we're looking at this particular application, not the entirety of the Silver Valley area plan. And the question is to do with emergency access to the area of Silver Valley.
But it's related to density.
Understood. When we're looking at a single application, not the entirety of the area.
Well, I don't agree with that, but.
Thank you for your point, Councilor Tan.
Thank you, Chair. I appreciate that. I think respectfully, I'd like to appeal the ruling of the chair on this one. I too am interested in hearing the understanding sort of a larger perspective around emergency access. And I think appreciate the point of larger context. And I think it is interesting for this application. And maybe through the chair, to you, Ms. Chair, if you, Madam Clerk, could just inform me how to do that.
You could challenge the decision of the chair and then it would be put to a vote of council.
So to your point, Councilor Tan, again, it's framing policy on the backs of single applications is something that's all councils have shied away from, as it does not lend to very good policy when we're looking at it in a piecemeal type of viewpoint, rather than looking at the entirety of the area plan and then being able to roll out the policy for that plan. Mayor Rumi?
I am challenging your statement. You just said it's creating policy. We're not creating policy. Right now, we're not creating policy. We're asking questions because that's what we're allowed to do at committee of the whole. So at this point, I will challenge the ruling of the chair,
Please,
just for that.
Madam Clerk.
And then, so the call a vote on the challenge. If you vote to support the challenge of the chair, then the question will be answered.
oh. Yeah.
Sorry, yes, Green would support the challenge.
Sorry, I just want to clarify on that. So Green would say that we support the challenge and that we are not in agreement with the ruling. And that the red would say we do support the chair's vision.
That's
or the
correct.
chair's answer.
Counselor Dewar.
Okay, I think we're going down a trail we don't need to go down. Counselor Youssef, you're correct. I mean, it is questions of clarification on the application, but also committee of the whole, the question being asked is needed, the answer so that Counselor Carreras can make the decision at the next meeting. So kind of everybody's kind of right here. So let's try and avoid the challenge and just perhaps get the question answered because it's relevant for Counselor Carreras to be able to make her decision next Tuesday. It's a general question, specific and in general. So I'd ask for you to consider that.
Thank you, Counselor Dewick. I thoroughly appreciate your input. And as I mentioned, I wasn't denying the answer to the question. I was simply saying that in the interest of time and in interest of this application, that the question be answered offline. However, thank you again for your sage advice. Chair will stand down. May I have the engineering please answer the question?
Actually, Mr. Chair, the CAO will take lead on this one.
Thank you, Mr. Hartman.
For your benefit of council, council's aware of the struggles we have with the secondary access and egress points out of Silver Valley. It's been made clear in your strategic plan and discussions are underway with engineering department as far as the 2024 work plan to start the design of those areas. To date, we're unsuccessful in providing guarantees from other levels of government. However, Ms. Anastasiadis and her efforts with her intergovernmental affairs has put this on both the radar of Ottawa and Victoria as a priority for funding for the municipality. So it is a priority of council. Council's made that very clear to staff, and staff are working through a process to ensure that this gets to fruition. Do we have a timeline? No, we don't. But it is linked to the discussions we've been having around the 240th connector and those opportunities. Staff will be doing the design work in 2024 for hopefully a hard press with the province and the federal government for funding. But currently we have this project unfunded, but it is a priority of the corporation to get that secondary access point. Do we have timelines? No, we don't. But is it top of mind and a priority of council? It is. So with that, I can't provide any more detail other than we don't have firm commitments from other levels of government, and we are seeking additional funding sources to move this project along expeditiously.
Thank you, Mr. Hartman. Councilor Carreras, I believe that satisfies your question.
Yes, thank you.
You're welcome. Councilor Ten, you had your card raised. No questions? Seeing no further questions. Second round. That was possibly the swiftest card raising that I've seen. Councilor Schiller.
Thank you, Chair. And yeah, you gotta move quick sometimes, or you miss it. Thank you. Okay. Through the chair, to staff is more, I think, of an engineering question. It is around the FSR and being able to sort of increase density in certain areas. And if I'm understanding the report correctly, it speaks to the ability that there's sort of an opportunity here to increase the FSR and create a more dense development because Fern Crescent is designated as a major corridor residential. Is that correct?
Yes, Fern Crescent's a major corridor. The major corridor go throughout the city and they are planning classification. So they're either arterial collector roads. Now the major corridor policies do apply to the areas outside of the area plans, including Silver Valley. So although it's a major corridor, the actual major corridors policies that we have apply to the general OCP areas outside of the Silver Valley and the town center plans. So it's the class of road that is a major corridor, but it's doesn't have a major corridor policy in the Silver Valley area plan. That makes sense. It's built to a major corridor, which is collector arterial typically, but the policies, we're drawing an analogy between the major corridor policies and the rest of the OCP and in the Silver Valley plan.
Okay.
By the type of road.
Are there certain characteristics of a road that make it, like, why is Fern Crescent considered a major
corridor? Is it the location? Is it the length? Is it the number of people that are living along it?
It's the, basically the hierarchy of road and the use of the road as a major road. So being a collector arterial road that provides transportation through a neighborhood to the broader part of the city. So I could turn over to the engineering department to advise on exactly if this is what class of road this is in the energy engineering hierarchy within major corridors.
Oh, the world of hierarchies. Through the chair, Mark Halpin, Manager of Transportation. 2 items. This is an arterial corridor. So it's classified as an arterial. It's also part of the TransLink MRN, which is a major road network. So it's identified with a 26-meter cross section to support that as well. So it's a major connection to the community.
Thank you. Thank you for that.
Okay.
Can you just confirm as well in the drawings, it showed a sidewalk being constructed along Fern Crescent in front of this development, and is that included in this proposal? I just want to double check.
Yeah.
Through the chair, there will be a multi-use path constructed across the front of this development on 128th, and then standard sidewalk on Fern Crescent.
Thank you for that clarification. Okay. This is, I don't want to put anybody on the spot, so this is a voluntary question, but the applicant is here, and I'm just wondering if the applicant would like to provide any more information about why they see that this is a good fit for this location. So I'll just propose that as an option if desired.
I did, Mr. Chair, forget to introduce that the applicant is here and available to answer questions, which he is willing to do. So
Okay.
turn it over to, yeah. If Chair so wish.
First off, thank you for your questions. Really appreciate you giving the application consideration and asking questions to get to know it. We have made a lot of significant changes to it. Just wanted to highlight a few points to some of the questions that had come up. So the Silver Area Plan was adopted in 2002. And thank you, Mark, for the great presentation as well. So that was 22 years ago. But the Silver Valley densities reflect, it was actually a 1996 OCP density provision of 40 hectares per unit. So it's 28 years ago. And that has not been updated. And it's not the normal floor space ratio density calculation of today. So that's why in this specific area, the units per hectare are a little bit lower. If we were to follow that 1996 provision, that would leave 1/3 of the site vacant and uneconomical to develop today. As far as have there been other applications? There have been other applications with increased density and density bonusing on 232 and 136 as well. There's 4 applications that we can provide the addresses for that have had similar density bonusing provisions approved for within the last 3 to 4 years. Councilor Kress, I just wanted to answer your question about the 1,300 square feet and above, like smaller units. We did have a good variation between 3 and 4 bedroom units, but we've dropped, I think, about 6, 7, 8,000 square feet of buildable square footage. Everything is kind of moving towards more around affordability. So we do still have all side-by-side units. Our company's never done a tandem unit before. We live here in Maple Ridge. We have a lot of data on what the Maple Ridge residents like. We're very proud of our brand, and we're here for the long term. So we would never want to build something that people don't appreciate here, but also it affects all of our other projects as well. So even at the DIM, there were 29 supporters. There's 8 opposed. There's a lot of those concerns have been addressed, except for some of these. The only items that we haven't been able to address. Other than that, if you go back to the dim comments, we'd addressed every single one, from the open space being short, from visitor stalls, dropping the density to 0.75, the garage sizes. The only ones that we can't address, and that was a good question about for engineering. That's out of our control, but the density will provide a quicker route to getting that funding from higher levels of government. Other than that, if there's any questions for me specifically, I'd be glad to answer them.
Thank you for that.
Thank you for participating in the discussion. I don't have any further questions.
Thank you.
Okay.
Councillor Chris, you had your card up?
Yeah, but I think there are more staff questions. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
I just did want to actually add one point, is that, at this stage, like, Bill 44 was approved and is going to be June 30th coming in. So, that would be 3 to 4 units per lot, which would be 81 to 108 units. This is kind of a lot less density than that. So I just wanted to point out that we've done our best to address the density in this area.
Okay, so can I just clarify with when you talked about the arterial route for Fern Crescent, this will be for engineering, I think. You talked about it, the 26-meter cross section. What does that mean? That's what makes it arterial route? Is that what I heard? And I don't know what that means.
Through the chair to Councillor Carreras, Fern Crescent and 128 here is designated an arterial, which is a 26-meter right-of-way.
Sorry, 26-meter?
Road right-of-way, the width.
Okay, the width.
Yeah,
okay.
That's the amount of city road we need normally. And just to clarify, this application through the Horse Hamlet, because of the park and the commercial use in this small hamlet, we are not anticipating 4 lanes of traffic on Fern Crescent. So it will be constructed with 2 lanes, which allows for a supported variance on that road right away from 26 down to, I believe, 21, which is noted in the report. So just to clarify that, our normally is 26, and they've demonstrated to date that they can accommodate the required services in a reduced road right away.
Thank you. And I think as you get east, the goal is it's not as dense. But Mike, through the sort of windy area of Fern Crescent, is that have the 26 meters?
In that section, no, we don't. And we look at it on a case by case, and transportation could probably speak a little wider on it. But the nature of Fern Crescent, it is a major road network because it serves a larger region up to the Alouette. It does have a lot of traffic, but also respecting the nature of Fern Crescent through the neighborhood and the rural nature of it. We obtain the right of way when we can, like through the Balsam section, we'll obtain a larger right of way, and through the windy sections, potentially less, depending on the needs. We want to respect the nature of the neighborhood through road design, but also recognizing the traffic impacts. So,
thanks. And then it was mentioned that the front of it is a multi-use path. Is it just in front of the section that's being proposed here, or is it the plan is it'll carry on and connect to the one that's further west?
Correct. The plan is to connect through Fern Crescent.
And that will be done soon?
Typically it's done through development, but I could defer to transportation and what the long-term plan is.
So would it depend on the other areas being developed to continue it through? So at the time being, it would be this short little path?
Under this application, they're just responsible for their frontage.
Okay. And then I have one more question, and it's with the new legislation that's come in around public hearings. I think I saw in this will go to public hearing. Does this actually still go to public hearing? Okay. We haven't had a full report yet, so I'm not entirely sure what impacts we have from the new ledge.
Yes, this will go to public hearing as there's a OCP amendment, not just zoning on it.
Just because it's an OCP. Okay, thanks.
Seeing no further questions, I have a question to staff. Since the application was sent back to staff with the direction from council, does staff feel that the applicant has been cooperative and has met the comments and stipulations that were made?
Mr. Chair, through your committee, yes, the garages have all been enlarged and by the removal of the ground floor bedrooms and then having the prohibition for bedrooms, habitable space on the ground floor and increasing the outdoor amenity space and decreasing the FSR to 0.75.
Thank you for that. Seeing no further questions, I'll call the question. All in favor? Motion carries. Thank you. Item 5.2, Madam Clerk. Sorry? Any opposed? I saw all green, so of course, automatically I'm in favor unless I do oppose. Item 5.2, Madam Clerk.
Thank you. The next item is application 2021-579-RZ for properties located at 23682 Dewdney Trunk Road to rezone from M1 to RM1 and R2 to permit the future subdivision of approximately 2 single-family lots and the construction of approximately 16 townhouse units. And staff are in attendance to present.
Okay, Mr. Chair and committee, this application here is for a site that's designated medium.
It's not the same slide.
It has to be advanced, the slide.
Unless you want to do the same one again.
Yeah.
We're looking at 23682 Dewdney Trunk Road.
Just need to catch up on the slides. There we go.
There. Mr. Chair and committee, this application at 23682 Dewdney Trunk Road is being considered for third reading of zone amending bylaw 782622. The application is this long site that stretches between 119th Avenue and Dewdney Trunk Road as shown on the cadastral map and is in an area that's designated urban residential, major corridor, Dewdney Trunk Road being the major corridor. It's the site on the ortho photograph showing the built environment. The warehouse with the industrial zoning to the west and single family development on all other sides to the south and east and further to the west. This application has been received to rezone the subject site from M1 service industrial to RM1 low density townhouse residential and R2 residential single detached medium density urban residential to permit the construction of 2 single family lots on Dewdney Trunk Road and 16 other townhouse units on the larger site to the south. Council had granted second reading to zone amending bylaw 7826/2022 on the 24th of October. But after having a public hearing and then being sent forward to consideration of third reading on the 28th of November 2023, council then referred this application back to provide further comments on the right in, right out access to the development from Dewdney Trunk Road and potential on-site storage options. So that here's a summary of how those items are being addressed with the applicant and by staff. So regarding the comments on allowing right in, right out access on Dewdney Trunk Road, we reviewed this again a second or maybe a third time with engineering staff and noted as this is an arterial road. It's an arterial road, major corridor under the council access management policy 9.4. A policy does not permit direct access and does not qualify for an exemption to these conditions as listed in the policy. The staff in engineering had conducted further additional review and found no extenuating circumstances to support this exemption from the policy to have an access onto Dewdney Trunk Road. The applicant also provided a technical memorandum showing the anticipated vehicle trip generation for this proposal, and that's attached to the report. And basically the memorandum from a transportation consultant noted that the development would generate 11 vehicle trips in the AM peak hour and 13 vehicle trips in the PM peak hour. And in accordance with the off-street parking and loading bylaw, the project does provide the required 36 off-street parking spaces. More than that, 37 spaces with 1 additional visitor space being provided. And long-term bicycle storage can be adequately provided in the garages of the individual units, which meet the requirements of the bylaw and are not being reduced. And here's just a table showing the parking requirements, meeting the residential parking requirements, and all side-by-side garages with no tandem garages, and the additional visitor space, so 5 visitor spaces being provided. And the applicant has provided more information showing where storage and bicycle parking could be provided in each garage. So here's on the storage options for garbage and recycling and bicycles, showing a van and a mid-size car with a scooter and 2 bikes, and the garbage and recycling containers in the perspective view and then in the plan view, and noting again that these meet the requirements with no variances to the sizes for parking spaces. And then there's another view just from the perspective showing the van and the car and the bikes and garbage and recycling, and just a table showing how the development meets the the length and the width and exceeds the vertical dimensions in the bylaw for parking in the zone. So just as a recap from the previous presentation, when this went forward for second reading and public hearing, the application is proposing a density of 0.6 FSR, which meets the base density of the RM1 zone and is less than many other townhouse developments with a 0.75 FSR density. The proposed townhouse development meets the requirements of the common open area and outdoor amenity space provisions of the zoning bylaw, and private outdoor amenity space requirements and permeable requirements of the zoning bylaw. The bylaw also meets the setback requirements of the RM1 zone, and the proposed townhouses are configured all as 3-bedroom units. And if this application does proceed to completion, there would be an $136,800 community amenity contribution made based on $7,400 unit contribution rate and $9,200 contribution rate for the single family lots. And the one variance for this proposal is not for the buildings, but because the lot is existing and long and narrow, that the proposed RM1 width be reduced from 27 meters to 24.6 meters for this application. And if the application proceeds through to completion, this would be in a development variance permit report and a development permit report going to council. And here's the site plan just showing 119th Avenue, which is so long, everything has to be rotated here. That's the south on the left, and showing the vehicle drive path from 119th and just going through north through the site and turning right, going to the east, that connects back out of the single family neighborhood. And then that east-west lane that's running at the right side of the diagram will be a public lane at that point, which is an extension of a public lane to the east and provides access to the 2 single family lots, which are similar to the lots to the east. And this is the diagram of the development, again split up because it's quite narrow, with block A at the south with the access road going up northward, continuing on past second block of units, which is 6 units, and then to the last block of units. And the elevations are in front of you, just showing at the top the elevations to that's the west side of the buildings facing the single family houses to the east, and that is the west side of the building facing the buildings to the industrial building to the west. That's the parking garage. A little hard to see. And then a cross section through the buildings. And here's an enlargement, which is easier to see here, with the garages on the internal driveway that goes north-south through the site. That goes north-south through the site. So if you were in the industrial building looking to this project here, this is what you would see. And if you're in the single family homes to the east, looking west, this is the back of the townhouse units. And the north and south elevations of the northerly and southerly most blocks are shown on the right. And this is just perspective here, showing the perspective. This is in the northwest looking southeast. This is the lane, basically. There's a school bus in the lane. Those are 2 parking spaces. And then that driveway goes all the way down to 119th Avenue at the end. And this is a perspective looking from the single family area again to the west or the east side of these townhouse units, blocks 1 and 2 there. And so the zone conditions are in front of you. I'll just summarize briefly that the standard rezoning servicing agreement would be received as outlined, and there'd be a security as outlined in the agreement. There'd be road dedication on 119th Avenue and for the new lane at the north side of the development, and registration of restrictive covenants for geotechnical considerations, protection of the visitor parking space, and for stormwater management. And just provision if there's any further direction from the Ministry of Environment that's determined beyond the site disclosure statement or based on the site disclosure statement, that would be addressed by staff and the applicant as required. And in addition to the site disclosure statement, there's the standard requirement to ensure there's no underground fuel storage and that be addressed through a stage 1 report if there was one found, and then the voluntary contribution of $136,800 for community amenity contribution payable at the time of adoption. Mr. Chair and committee.
Thank you, Mr. McMullen. With that, I'll entertain a motion to move this forward to our next council meeting, please. Moved by Councillor Ten, seconded by Councillor Schiller. Opening the floor for questions of clarification. Councillor Schiller.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you to staff for that. And I just wanted to ask a little bit about the interface between the townhomes here in this proposal and the existing residential, which I believe is on the west side of the lot.
The existing residential on the east side of the
On the east side,
yes.
okay, perfect. Okay, so just speaking of that side, particularly, is the applicant able to retain any of the existing significant trees that are along that line specifically, sort of a buffer between this proposal and the existing residential?
No, there's not retention in that area. No.
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 Okay. And looking at the drawings, it does seem to be like a fairly narrow strip that would be available there to replant trees.
The setback is 7.5 meters. So
Okay.
that's what's required in the zoning. So that is 25 feet. So that actually is exceeding the same or exceeding the setback of the single family zoning to the east. So it's a typical single family setback. So there would be room to plant some hedges and trees in that area, which are shown on the preliminary plans and would be included in the development permit plans.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. That's my question.
Thank you, Councillor Schiller. Councillor Ten, please.
Thank you, Chair. And through you, I just have one question about the short-term visitor parking. Are there any requirements for short-term visitor parking in this area?
There are no specific requirements in visitor parking on time limits for residential developments. There's a covenant just being placed in
Pardon
title.
me, I forgot the keyword for short-term visitor bike parking.
Oh, bike
bicycle
parking.
parking.
Oh, I didn't hear the bike. Yeah.
I missed it.
Oh, the applicant hasn't proposed that. They're not required and the applicant has not
I see.
proposed that. These are townhouses where people will visit the front door and could put their bike in the garage if they wish, but they have not chosen to do that. But there's something we could look at. There might be room for a few spaces on the small site because it's quite small and there are a small number of units.
I'd be curious if the applicant has thoughts on that. Thank you. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Ten. Any other questions of clarification? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All in favor? And opposed? Let the record show that the chair is opposed. Motion carries. Moving to item 5.3.
Thank you. Item 5.3 is application 2017-548-DVP for property located at 12313 McNutt Road. And the development variance permit is to request a variance to waive the road dedication requirement for a rural cul-de-sac and to reduce the required cul-de-sac asphalt carriageway radius. Staff have mailed out 15 notices to the affected property owners and 0 pieces of correspondence have been received and staff are in attendance.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Mr. McMullen, 3 for 3.
Okay. Mr. Chair and Committee, this application is in an area designated suburban residential. The existing designation is zoning is RS3, single detached rural residential. There's a rezoning application to rezone it to RS2, single detached suburban residential. And the area is 2.9 acres, the full site, which will be subdivided into 2 lots. And the purpose of this variance is to waive the road dedication requirement of 31 meters for a rural cul-de-sac. And this is the subject site here. This is the subject site on the OCP suburban residential designation map. And this is the ortho photo showing the built and unbuilt environment in this area. And this development variance permit application is being received in conjunction with the rezoning as noted, should be forwarded to the next council meeting on the 30th of January for consideration of adoption. And this variance here is to reduce the rural standard cul-de-sac to be dedicated and constructed as the required variances reduce this requirement at the end of 272nd Street. Proposed variance for road dedication supported because existing asphalt on the road will still be upgraded for immediate emergency vehicle use within this proposed reduced road standard, which engineering has reviewed and accepted. Specific variances to the Maple Ridge subdivision servicing and development bylaw that requires a rural cul-de-sac to be a minimum radius of 31 meters in diameter. 31 radius of 15.5 meters or 31 meters in diameter, I should say, and an asphalt carriageway of 11 meters or 22 meter diameter. The 272nd Street right of way is 20 meters and has no asphalt bulb constructed. The developer is required to widen the asphalt within the existing 2 meter right of way dedication to 6.5 meters or I think there's a typo there. 13 meter, yes, diameter dimension is also being demonstrated to the satisfaction of the fire department that this reduced cul-de-sac is sufficient to meet the requirements of the emergency access, 13 meters in diameter. And so the recommendation is that the corporate officer be authorized to sign and seal this development permit, development variance permit 2017-548 DVP respecting the property at 12313 McNutt Road, Mr. Chair and Committee.
Thank you, Mr. McMullen. May I entertain a motion to move this forward to council? Moved by Councillor Dewick, seconded by Councillor Tan. Questions of clarification? My only question was already answered and it was concerning emergency vehicles. So I'm glad to hear that the fire department signed off on this. With that, I'll call the question. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. On to engineering services, item 6.1. Madam Clerk.
Thank you. The item is latecomer agreement LC 178/22, which provides the city assessment of cost allocation of the subdivision service works to the benefiting lands.
As there is no staff presentation, we'll entertain a motion moved by Councillor Dewick, seconded by Councillor Schiller. Any questions of clarification? Seeing none, all in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. 6.2, Madam Clerk.
Yes, the next one is another latecomer agreement for LC 182/24. And again, provides the city's assessment of cost allocation of the extended storm sewer servicing to the benefiting lands.
Thank you. May I have a motion, please? Moved by Councillor Dewick, seconded by Councillor Schiller. Any questions of clarification? Seeing none, all in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. Item 7.1, Madam Clerk.
Item 7.1 is award of contract EN 23-107 for the Abernathy Way Road improvements between 224th Street and 230th Street. And this is seeking council approval to award the Abernathy Way Road improvements construction contract to Lafarge Canada, Inc. and to increase the existing Applin and Martin Consultants Limited contract to provide construction support services, and staff are in attendance.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Please.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. I thought it was important to speak to this project in the context of the larger group of investments along the Abernathy Way corridor. So construction of the corridor extends from Golden Ears Way to 256th Street, and it's broken down into multiple phases. 210 Street to 224 Street is currently 4 lanes. Last year, we widened Abernathy between 230th and 232nd to 4 lanes, and it included intersection upgrades at key intersections of 232 and Abernathy, as well as 232 and Dudney Trunk Road to alleviate congestion during morning and afternoon rush. As part of this project, we will be widening Abernathy from 224 to 230th to 4 lanes, and this will provide a complete 4-lane or a continuous 4-lane road on Abernathy between 210 and 232 Street. Currently, we're completing the design for extension of Abernathy from 232 to 240 Street, and we're working on the conceptual design for extending Abernathy from 240th to 256. And I should say item D there, which is under design, will be constructed in 2025. The images provide an overview of the project scope, and as I mentioned, we will be 4-laning Abernathy between 224 to 230 Street. And currently, it's a 2-lane arterial road. Construction will begin in winter of this year, or like winter as in now, and will be completed in spring of 2025. Road upgrades will provide dedicated 2 lanes in dedicated through lanes. 2 dedicated through lanes in the eastbound and westbound direction, as well as intersection upgrades at 227, 228, and 230th Street to provide new streetlights, as well as improvements to the existing left turn bays in all directions at these intersections. The new multi-use path will be constructed on the north side of the road and will include path lighting. And finally, we will be constructing a boulevard on the north side of the road to include a grassed bioswale, trees, and vegetated areas. And this will be a green infrastructure component that will improve treatment of the road drainage before discharge to culverts. The project was tendered in accordance with our procurement policy, and tender closed on January 15th. We received 9 bids, and that's a pretty competitive submission. For context, in the past 1 or 2 years, there's been projects where we received only 2 to 3 contractor bids. Lafarge Canada is the low bidder on this project, and their bid is compliant with the bid requirements, and the project cost is below the project budget as well as the engineer's estimate. And that's a result of the competitive bid as well as the seasonality of the tender, where contractors are looking to secure large projects for the year ahead. And with that, that concludes our presentation. So I'd be happy to answer any questions you have.
Thank you for that. I'll first entertain a motion to move this forward to council, moved by Councillor Carrera, seconded by Councillor Tan. Questions of clarification, Councillor Tan.
Thank you, Chair. Just have a small question about the contract bidding process, if I may. How is there a way to evaluate sort of the quality of the contracts? I understand from the report there that all of them are compliant with the requirements, and on top of there is sort of like an evaluation metric.
For construction projects, we tender based on a low bid process and ensure that they're compliant with the insurance and bonding requirements, as well as they're compliant with WorkSafe. But no, we typically don't evaluate the means and methods on this type of tender of the contractor. That's entirely up to the contractor.
I appreciate that, and I mean, just to make sure I understand, I mean, how do we? And like I assume that a low bid sort of process is probably fairly standard across the industry. And I'm just trying to understand, like, how do we then assess the quality? If say the second or third highest bidder, or so the second and third down the line would be, say, more bang for a buck, say?
Yeah, so generally, again, it is a low bid process. However, we know the typical names that are bidding on these type of projects. So with the name recognition and knowing the types of projects they've done, typically we are satisfied that they can complete the work. And that's part of the bonding requirements. The bonding company has to be satisfied that they can complete the work as well. Otherwise, they wouldn't receive the bonding. So for this project, I think most of I didn't look at the top end of the 9, but at least the cohort of lower bidders were all, familiar faces for us. We've had past projects where sometimes a totally unqualified contractor may submit, but we go through the review and determine if their bid is compliant or not through review of their submission, as well as, if needed, we may need to speak with the contractor and ask further questions. But that wasn't required for this project. Lafarge is a major player.
Thank you, appreciate it. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Tan. Chair recognizes Councillor Carreras.
Thanks. Mine are sort of similar with Councillor Tan. Just nothing to do with the companies in here at all. I'm just curious. How do we, so I guess where I'm coming from this question is we have to take the lowest bid, I think, in our procurement policy.
Yeah, through the chair to Councillor Carreras. That's correct.
We have to take the lowest bid. So my concern is when our company's putting in a lower bid to get the job, but then the overall cost ends up, because of overruns, becomes expensive because the bid didn't, you know what I mean? They put in a lower bid than what it actually cost to get the job. And so what do we have in place to sort of, obviously there's a contingency and there's going to be some movement, unknowns and that we can't account for, but is there anything in place that we sort of hold companies to this initial bid, or at least within a percentage of that bid, so that we prevent that I'm going to put in a really low bid to get the job, even though there's no way and again, these are all big players. I recognize that, and it's not this particular one. How do we prevent them from just putting in a low bid and then ends up being the 12 million anyhow?
Yeah, through the chair to Councillor Carreras,
I think Mr. Thompson may want to take this one.
He's dancing in the back, like, pick me, pick me.
Put me in, coach, put me in.
Thank you. So through the chair, procurement actually will come forward, I believe, just in 1 week to talk about procurement policy, which should be a great time to really dive into some of these pieces. But with respect to the procurement practice and how we're approaching pieces, where we know what quality and what our standards are, it's a whole lot easier to go through this process. We would go through a different process if it was a little bit more nebulous with respect to what we're looking for in a way of a product. So with respect to what prevents somebody from putting in a low bid and then looking for change orders would be how we've approached the due diligence and putting forward our requirements. So where things are very prescribed, this process works very well.
Okay, so in the RFP process is how we designate, and so we have a high level of request in our RFP so that when they're submitting it, they can justify their cost.
Yes, essentially we define our requirements.
Yeah, and to elaborate on that a little bit further, yes, for the RFP process where we would select a consultant, we'll do an evaluation based on the submission, as well as, some complex construction projects may require a different method of delivery other than the low bid, like we may pre-qualify contractors if the project is a little bit more complex and we want a certain caliber of contractor, but this project didn't require that. And finally, to ensure that we don't get cost overruns, that we do that through strong project management. The design is supposed to include all of the envisioned scope. Of course, contingency is there to address unforeseen items. So strong project management and strong support from our consultant and their inspector is really crucial in ensuring that we hold all contractors to deliver what they bid.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Carreras. Chair recognizes Mayor Rumi.
Thank you very much, Councillor Carreras, has already asked my questions. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Just checking in with Councillor Dozy. We haven't heard from you all day today. Good, thank you. Seeing no further questions, I'll call the, oh, now he's got a question. All right, I will come up. Counselor Dozie, please.
Yes, I'm just by way of recommendation. Thank you very much, by the way, Mr. Chair, for giving me this opportunity. I kind of listened very attentively, but I just want to say that when it comes to procurement of this nature, sometimes I believe that if the contractors are pre-qualified before they bid for this job, to some extent, it does help to guarantee the class of contractors that will be involved and the integrity of the kind of project they will be able to handle, given the conditions they will have made during the pre-qualification process. Thank you very much. I'm just making a recommendation.
Thank you, Counselor Dozie. Seeing no further questions, I'll call the question. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries.
The next item on the agenda is the community forum. Participants in the community forum are reminded that there should be no discussion of public hearing bylaws which have not yet reached conclusion. Each speaker will have 2 minutes to speak to council. A second opportunity may be provided once all speakers in the queue have had an opportunity to speak. The total time allotted for community forum is 15 minutes. If you wish to inquire about additional opportunities to address council, please contact the corporate officer. For members of the public who would like to speak during community forum, clearly state your name and city of residence before beginning your comments. If you are participating electronically, please use the raise hand icon when you're called upon and turn on your camera. If you're attending in person, please come forward to the podium when the chair invites speakers.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. And do we have anyone in chambers? Seeing none, anyone online? Don't see any hands raised. We'll conclude community forum at this point and move to adjournment. And we are adjourned. Thank you.